I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE, symbol CRL, and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's the publisher of thebreaker.news. Welcome to the new year almost.
Oh, thank you.
Bob, out of all the stories that you covered over the past year, what stuck out in your mind the most?
Well, there were so many. The Meng Wanzhou case, the Huawei chief financial officer who, that sparked a diplomatic row and sparked some major questions about our relations with China. An important trading partner, but do we really want to be that close to this country, which is jockeying to be a superpower, but also jockeying to be a superpower with severe human rights abuses of its own people? That was a very important case, a very interesting case. It put unexpected media spotlight on Vancouver. The world media was looking at Vancouver. This was one of the biggest stories worldwide from a business and geopolitical standpoint for all of 2018. And as I mused on the Breaker.news, that this was a story that was about transportation and communications. You had the chief financial officer and deputy chair of a major Chinese communications company being transported to jail from Vancouver International Airport. She'd flown in from Hong Kong, was on a layover on her way to Mexico, and onward from Mexico she was supposed to go to Argentina and France and then back to China. So you had a transportation itinerary that was disturbed for this communications executive more than 3 decades after Vancouver hosted Expo 86, which was all about transportation and communications. So you have this case here, which will be unfolding in the new year, because by February 1st, the United States has to file their application for extradition. Meng Wanzhou is, of course, out on bail with conditions, including living under a curfew with security guards she has to pay for at her house in Dunbar. That will be interesting to watch because of the geopolitical intrigue with the United States wanting to bring her south of the border to answer to these charges of fraud when it comes to doing trade through a dummy company with Iran, despite the trade embargoes. This is not going to be an easy process. We'll probably be talking about this time next year. The extradition is still going on. Extradition through British Columbia courts has been notoriously slow, as we saw from the Rakesh Saxena case, which started in the mid-90s and didn't end until about 2009 when he was finally shipped off to Thailand. So don't expect this to be a slow process whatsoever, but it will remain intriguing. Of course, the big story of the year, really in the Lower Mainland, was the changing of the guard. City halls, municipal halls saw new mayors, new councillors, and we saw the end of the Gregor Robertson Envision Vancouver era at Vancouver City Hall. We knew it was the end of the Gregor Robertson era back in January when he announced it, but didn't believe that Vision Vancouver would crumble the way it did. There's no one from Vision Vancouver on City Council or Parks Board. There's one Vision Vancouver member on school board. That's it. This party essentially had a farewell event November 2nd at the Seaforth Armory. I knocked on the door and cajoled my way in to see essentially the dissolution of that party. A lot of people who pushed to get change at Vancouver City Hall for a progressive coalition, a coalition of provincial and federal NDPers, federal Liberals with some provincial BC Liberals, changed the course of City Hall back in 2008 when Obama was getting into power in the United States, when the world was in the mire of the credit crunch and the great recession, you had Vision Vancouver take over Vancouver City Hall and dominate Vancouver City Hall and reshape Vancouver City Hall and politicize Vancouver City Hall. The changes that happened in the Vision Vancouver era, which was almost 10 years, are unmatched. The good, the bad, and the ugly, and the ugly and the bad are the main reasons why Gregor Robertson didn't run again, because he was seen as someone who was basically in the pocket of the development industry and had sold Vancouver out. Vancouver had become a haven for foreign money, Chinese money, and had become a resort city, and had strayed so far away from the promises that he made about solving homelessness. That's how he got into power, was to solve homelessness, to house the homeless. And the only homeless that really got homes in Vancouver during that era that were guaranteed were those who had very large wealth, took over the city and changed neighborhoods, and it was a point of no return. Gregor Robertson got his 3 terms, didn't stand for a 4th, but the next step in his career will be interesting to watch, to see how he parlays his time at City Hall into something else. I don't think we'll see him in politics. Don't think we'll see him running in 2019, in October 2019, when the federal election happens. But where will Gregor Robertson land? He's definitely someone who is a polarizing force, who wishes he could have just been the bike lane mayor, but the bike lanes were rather overshadowed by the housing crisis that happened under his watch.
Also, it was pointed out to me by the Taxpayers Federation, out of his 11 or so years in office, he spent almost 1 year of that outside of Vancouver, usually during the time the city was facing snow and ice crises. Yeah,
he found himself outside Vancouver more often than not. I was able to bring those numbers together through Freedom of Information requests. That was the other thing, that when Gregor Robertson came to power in 2008, he promised to make City Hall open and accountable, and he even used the words, "I will not let you down." So he was making a promise, and that was a promise not only after he won the election, but a promise in his swearing-in speech. And slowly but surely, the communications clampdown happened at City Hall, whether it was the secrecy in the Freedom of Information Office and the shenanigans that were happening at the Freedom of Information Office, which were as bad as, if not worse than, what was going on in the BC Liberal government. And of course, the expansion of the communications department from just a handful of people to almost 50 people. They had, on per capita basis, more people working in communications at Vancouver City Hall per capita than are working at the provincial government in communications. It became a very politicized atmosphere as Vision Vancouver dominated City Hall and made its changes and made its social engineering. The legacy of Vision Vancouver is going to be something that'll be rated and debated for years and years to come. And of course, Gregor Robertson and his trips, a lot of questions about those trips. Was it just brand building? Did he do enough to actually sell Vancouver as a place to do business and to invest, or was this really just about him? He was in bed with some very large lobby groups, environmental lobby groups, and he was also going to United Nations events, going to these events at times which were pivotal. When there were headlines in Vancouver in 2015, 2016, 2017 about serious problems to do with the opioid overdose crisis, when there were serious problems about homelessness, things that needed a mayor to be in his office and out on the streets with sleeves rolled up. Where was Gregor? Well, Gregor was off jet-setting, staying in some of the finest hotels in the biggest cities in the world, rubbing shoulders with presidents and United Nations bigwigs. He was so far disconnected from Vancouver that I don't think Vancouverites really will realize that until we see the years to come. So this is something that also puts more pressure on Kennedy Stewart, his successor in City Hall, to really mend fences and to really be a stay-at-home mayor to solve the problems here and to keep a cap on trips around the world, because there's some serious problems that, again, need a mayor here who's a stay-at-home mayor who can roll up his sleeves and do something, because there's a lot of people in a lot of corners of the city, a city that's really hurting, a city that still is quite divided, a city where we've got a mayor who's independent, even though he comes from the NDP, who has a bit of a fractious council. There's, again, 5 NPA members who were elected on October 20th, all of them women, interestingly enough. You've got a couple of Greens who joined with Adrian Carr, and then you've got from one city, and then you've got one from Cope. So you've got a real mix there. You don't have a one with a majority, but you've got a bit of a split there. This is going to be a challenge for Kennedy Stewart. He said he's going to try to run a city council similar to what Mike Harcourt ran back when he was on city council as the mayor back in the 80s, known for being a consensus builder, even though he was from the left side of the political spectrum. That's what Kennedy Stewart is trying to show for Vancouver.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and Canada. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol ASDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin and talking about some of the biggest stories of the year. Bob, in Surrey, a change of face in the mayor's chair with Doug McCallum replacing what had been there, the power structure that had been there for quite some time. Can you tell us about that? Good move, bad move, or in between?
Well, that was fascinating how that all evolved. That was a slow motion train wreck, similar to what happened in Vancouver, because you had Linda Hepner, the mayor, who had, like Gregor Robertson, said that she was going to run again, and then she decided and made a surprise announcement similar to the way Gregor Robertson did, that she wasn't going to run again, and that opened the door to someone to come and fill the vacuum. On the Surrey first side of things, that was Linda Hepner's party, the party that her predecessor Diane Watts had founded. They had some infighting there, and several of those councillors left the fold and decided to go independent on their own, form their own. And then you had Tom Gill become the heir apparent, and there was a nasty campaign in Surrey looking at Tom Gill and his perceived lack of integrity, which really never was substantiated, but there were complaints made to the RCMP in Surrey about land use decisions, about business holdings by various people in City Hall. Don't know if there's ever going to be any conclusion to those, if there might be anyone charged or not. Just don't know, but that campaign got very, very nasty very quickly. It also opened the door to Doug McCallum and his comeback. The mayor before Diane Watts took over, and he got back in and won pretty handily with a bit of a populist campaign. And really, two platform planks are what he ran on. It was almost like you can call it water skiing. He was standing on 2 planks the whole way. One of those planks was to kill the LRT and expand SkyTrain. And the other plank was to replace the RCMP in Surrey with a municipal police force. There was merit to both of those, but there's also demerit to both of those. Both of those are going to cost a lot more. Running a municipal police force is more expensive than running an RCMP detachment, although the one benefit you do get from a municipal police force is that the chief and the force is accountable from an operations or from a financial standpoint to the mayor and council, whereas the RCMP, that's a contract basis and often beholden to the whims of the federal or provincial government. The situation locally doesn't always factor into the decision making from the high level when you have an RCMP detachment. So McCallum was trying to use the type of police as a way to deal with calls for more justice in Surrey, where there is a gang problem and a problem which has been deadly for several years and doesn't seem to have any light at the end of the tunnel. Well, he was there saying the best way to get a handle on the gang issue is by changing the type of police force, getting a municipal police force in instead of the RCMP. And so that's going to roll on into the new year as they figure out exactly how much it'll cost and exactly how complex it'll be. It's not something that they can do overnight. It's going to take many years to do. Even though there is a 2-year opt-out clause, it's not going to be as simple as McCallum seems to tell the public it will be. The transit one is interesting because there's been so much work for so many years to the point that the federal and provincial government had already put money aside to help Surrey build a light rail transit system in Surrey. This was going to be a system that was going to help urban development in Surrey. For Surrey itself to build around transportation, similar to what Vancouver did in the 20th century with the trolleys. A lot of Vancouver streets, especially downtown, are the legacy of the trolleys, and they were built around the transit. Well, that's what the idea was for Surrey, was to build inside Surrey to keep people, give people a chance to live in Surrey, play in Surrey, work in Surrey, and to get around inside Surrey. Others had some different ideas about that, and Doug McCallum, his idea is to expand SkyTrain all the way through Surrey to Langley, so that people from Langley, next door to Surrey, can also work, play, and live close to Surrey, if not in Surrey itself. Well, the big snag there is the cost. Surrey already spent about $70 million to study and to do preparatory work for the LRT. Well, all that has ground to a halt. They're going to have to start from ground zero. It's going to be very, very expensive, and this plan looks like it's going to cost $3, $4, maybe even $5 billion by the time it's finished, if it's ever finished. Meanwhile, Vancouver is going ahead with the subway under Broadway, and there's a push to expand that subway all the way out to UBC, but of course that's not funded yet either. But Doug McCallum got elected on these two major big-ticket promises that I think people in 2019 in Surrey are start to get some sticker shock, and wonder if one or both might eventually be canceled. If saner heads may prevail, and once the dollars are looked at, that Doug McCallum might say, well, maybe we're not going to go with municipal police force, or maybe we're going to go with a different kind of transit system, and maybe not go SkyTrain. That's going to be a big question to see if one or both of those ideas is either delayed or is canceled altogether once Doug McCallum sees that it's not as easy as he thought it would be.
Well, already Doug has pulled out one of the oldest political tricks there is, saying, gee, the old council left us in pretty bad financial shape, so they had plans to hire more RCMP officers. They canceled that. They canceled the building of a recreational center and a library, something that perhaps could keep youth from getting into games.
That's right. The debt message that Doug McCallum is putting out there may not be as severe as it actually is. There's been some questions about the numbers he's been using. No doubt, any politician should be keeping a close eye on the pocketbook and making sure that the public treasury is not exhausted, and that when they are spending, they're spending it correctly. But again, that's already earning him some opposition in the community, especially when you look at hockey and other sports and recreation registration in Surrey. It's a growing municipality which needs more facilities, needs them more and quicker. And again, as you say, there's no better way to help build and help foster better communities than have the youth have an outlet to play and learn and make friendships. And one of those ways is through a hockey arena, and the Cloverdale Hockey Arena is not going to go forward. There were some serious questions about the building there because the soil conditions, but that's something they could have got around. But I think that's going to earn him some political enemies in the new year, and there's already a bit of a split on council because of some of the councillors from his own Safe Surrey coalition, which voted against the budget because of the cancellation of the hiring of 12 new police officers. So one of them is Jack Hundle, a new councillor who got elected on McCallum's ticket. He came from a 25-year career with the RCMP. He's seen it from that perspective of actually being a police officer on the beat in a place like Surrey, which is such a vast municipality, which has less police coverage than Vancouver does, and it's got more geography and more traffic congestion, and you've got the same dynamic there, where because of affordability, you've got police officers who can't all afford to live in the community, and you've got some serious situations with organized crime, and you know, this is not going to end well for Doug McCallum if he continues to go on and break promises and say one thing and do another. Because as much as you want to replace the RCMP with a municipal force, there's this perception that there isn't enough police and isn't enough justice and isn't enough crime fighting in Surrey. And this mistake that he made, I think, will come home to roost in 2019, especially if there's a situation that's proven that crime does happen, or a prosecution falls apart because of lack of manpower.
Well, Surrey, population-wise, is almost the size of Vancouver, but it only has half the number of police officers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a troubling situation, but you'll see that the RCMP will pull out all stops in the new year if McCallum raises the rhetoric. Surrey is also unique because it is a border community, and you can see that the RCMP will probably put that message out there sometime in the new year, especially if there's something that happens along the border that the RCMP is able to solve. For instance, they'll tell everyone who is listening that having a federal police agency as the local police contracting agency is beneficial for those reasons, and they can perhaps do things or have special expertise and techniques that maybe a municipal police force wouldn't. So there could be a war of words going into the new year, especially when it is a new year, which is a federal election year.
Also, the RCMP has helicopters. Vancouver does not.
That's right. The sharing of resources. We do have a bit of a patchwork system where some municipal forces are collaborating with the RCMP on certain things, and you do have the sharing of some resources, and the RCMP again has tools that the municipal forces don't. Again, this goes back to the recommendations of Wally Opal a number of years ago that there really should be a regional police force. And maybe it's not just Surrey that should be looking at getting rid of the RCMP, that maybe Surrey should look at a strength in numbers idea. Maybe Surrey should be talking to Richmond and Burnaby and others, because replacing one RCMP detachment with the municipality isn't going to solve the other bigger issue, which is really regional municipal policing. We've got too many fiefdoms, whether it's municipal governments or municipal police agencies. They have to be talking and thinking regionally, because the transportation networks, because the municipal borders, there's no walls there. There's connections and links everywhere, and crime and criminals move pretty quickly.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin about some of the top stories of the year. Bob, the Sergeant-at-Arms scandal at the BC legislature, we don't really know what's behind it or how big it's going to be, but it is unprecedented. What do we know so far, and what do you think could happen?
Well, November 20th was the day the rock pile got rocked. The rock pile is, of course, the nickname for the Parliament buildings over in Victoria when the legislature suspended with pay indefinitely and immediately Craig James, who's the clerk, and Gary Lenz, who's the Sergeant-at-Arms, the top two officials. Basically, Craig James was like the CEO of the legislature, and Gary Lenz was like the COO of the legislature, although Gary Lenz, his job not only was about really operations, but his job was also about security at the legislature. So this happened because the RCMP, we found out that day, had been investigating for several months allegations about goings-on at the legislature, and that we found out that the RCMP had asked the government for the Assistant Deputy Minister of Justice had asked late September for the appointment of a special prosecutor. Well, a couple days later, we found out there was actually the appointment of two special prosecutors. So we found out November 20th that the RCMP was investigating, and there were two special prosecutors, unprecedented, because normally it's just one special prosecutor, but they said the size and the scope, potential size and scope of this investigation demanded more than one special prosecutor. And, the National Post did report that there is some sort of fraud aspect to this, or accusation of fraud, and through my sources, I've been able to learn that there's some sort of allegation of corruption that has caused this investigation, and that indeed it could be very large, very vast, and will be something that we'll be talking about into the new year. But it's also something which caused a lot of political to and fro because of Daryl Plekas, who is the Speaker of the House, who originally went to the RCMP many, many months ago with concerns that he said were apparent almost immediately after he was appointed the Speaker in September 2017. Well, he's, of course, an independent, elected twice as a BC Liberal. He stood up against Christy Clark at a caucus retreat at the end of July of 2017, after the party had lost power to the NDP and Greens. He stood up to Christy Clark and wasn't going to support her anymore, and there were others in caucus who were of like mind. And not long after he stood up to her, she decided to pull the plug on her political career and come back to Vancouver and leave politics, and allowing the Liberals to have a leadership convention. But Daryl Plekas became an independent and became the Speaker, which gave the NDP and Greens an extra seat cushion, so that the Speaker wouldn't have to be breaking ties if there were ties between the Liberals in opposition and the Green-supported NDP minority government. So the Liberals, ever since that summer, have been the highest levels. People like Rich Coleman and Mike DeYoung have been out for revenge. Not only that they want to topple the NDP Green Alliance and get back to power, but they also don't want Daryl Plekas to be Speaker anymore. And that's what's really fueling their fire. Mary Polak who's the House Leader, has been quite vociferous on this, asking a lot of questions at Legislative Assembly Management Committee meetings. But you do also have people on the Green side and the NDP side who are reminding the Liberals that there's a police investigation here, and there's not one, but there's two special prosecutors dealing with some serious accusations, and that this investigation has to be allowed to take its course without political interference. The activity on the Liberal side since this broke seems to indicate that the Liberals may be not just wanting to use this to score political points in their strategy to get back into power, but that there may be something in their closet that might fall out. Some skeletons might fall out of the closet as the police investigate this. And now we've got Daryl Plekas at the December 6th meeting saying that he wants forensic audits of Craig James and Gary Lenz's office, and that if the taxpayers aren't disgusted by what might be found out in those forensic audits, then he'll quit. He's that confident that there was wrongdoing that he's willing to put his job and his reputation on the line. This is someone who is an academic, someone who is a criminologist, who has published numerous academic papers as well as books and textbooks about fighting crime. And he seems to have found what he believes is crime in the legislature and wants to fix the legislature. One of the problems with the legislature is it's not covered by the Freedom of Information law, and that this is a place where $77 million net was spent in the last fiscal year. It's not covered by the FOI law, so we don't know exactly where our money went. And so the top two people in charge of the legislature are suspended with pay for the time being. They hired lawyers, they hired a PR company. They say that they did no wrong, and they demanded their jobs back. But we'll have to see where this police investigation goes. This could be something which could last for months, if not years. But will it have a legacy? Will this cause the end of secrecy at the legislature? Will the NDP, when this is all said and done, do the right thing and bring the legislature into the FOI law? It really is just silly that this institution, which is grasping at the 19th century, has not been modernized. That our money can go into this institution, and we really have no right to know how it's spent. They do proactively release every year a financial report that shows their suppliers and who gets paid what, but except for the top line information, we've got no right to know what goes on with our money. And that could be the root of this, that people in the legislature may have misspent our money, which is quite distressing. At least that's the message that Daryl Plekas put forward in the Legislative Assembly Management Committee meeting.
Bob, I hope you have a great new year.
Thank you.
My guest has been award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's the publisher of TheBreaker.News, his website, TheBreaker.ca. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Best of the holidays.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.